Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I feel very honored and privileged to give this presentation at such an odd and interesting time. This talk comes in 5 parts. I'll start with introductory remarks about criticality in data visualization. Then in 3 steps, I try to demonstrate the value of philosophy for visualization design and research. And at the end, I will try to conclude in time with promises, pitfalls, and a plea. The premise of this talk is that visualizations are particular articulations of data. That is, they say something, they speak to issues, and they make statements. When we consider visualization in this way, we can ask who is speaking and also from which position. As articulations, data visualizations can have descriptive and argumentative functions. They describe what is and or might also argue what should be. And over the course of a visualization's lifetime, especially during collaborative projects, maybe with humanities scholars, the roles shift from exploration to communication, and actually most likely will oscillate between these. Yet even before a visualization is actually being used, there are already crucial assumptions at play about the holy trinity of data viz: users, data, and tasks. These words are already saying a lot about the basic assumptions of our field, and we can rethink, redefine, and reimagine them. Thankfully, this is already underway. These terms are being decentered to give way to more nuanced notions of the who, what, and how of our field. We know by now that seemingly gender-neutral terms, such as users, are actually not understood as such. Instead, they are largely read and imagined as male by both women and men. So we need to find a language that actually strives for inclusion. For example, the study by Adam Bradley and colleagues indicated that persons, for example, and participants were less often implicitly understood as male. When it comes to notions of data, we already have the emergence of critical data studies as an entirely new field. And maybe briefly here, I'd just like to mention Johanna Drucker's proposal to reconceptualize data as capta, data as being actually taken in contrast to be given, in order to refer to the intentions and decisions involved in generating or collecting data. And while there are numerous task taxonomies in visualization, there's a growing interest in activities and practices that we may want to pay attention to, in particular in the context of teaching and knowledge acquisition, as for example the VIS activities workshop we'll explore tomorrow. Now, just to be clear, this is not hair-splitting, but about terminological plurality. By reconsidering some basic terms, we can ask new questions about visualization, such as who not, what for, how about, under which conditions, and also for which purpose. These kinds of questions open up critical perspectives on the basic tenets of visualization. And critical here refers simply, yet fundamentally, to the question, why is it like this? And not like that. Why is it not otherwise? And more elaborately, a critical approach to visualization actually challenges the taken for grantedness of the underlying assumptions and actual decisions. A few years ago, my colleagues at the time at the University of Calgary, Patrick Feng, Christopher Collins, and Sheila Carpendale, and I noticed the proliferation of data visualization across various sectors and settings. We also noticed actually a lack of critical perspectives on data visualization. So we wondered what a critical approach to visualization could possibly look like that would help us to come to grips with the politics embedded into data visualization. Based on critical theories of knowledge, pedagogy, and geography, we tentatively formulated a critical approach to information visualization that proposed 4 basic commitments that visualization designers should aspire to. Disclosure is about making a visualization more transparent by revealing data sources, intentions, and decisions. Plurality is based on the premise that there's no visualization that captures all aspects of an issue. If we accept that, then the principle of plurality encourages the designer to include a variety of perspectives with special consideration of the people affected by a topic and those who are systematically excluded. Contingency is about the variety of experiences that a visualization allows for. Is the visualization highly prescriptive, or does it invite a range of interpretation? A VIS designed for contingency would be sensitive to the changing nature of the represented phenomenon, as well as the particular situation of the viewer. In this sense, it would allow viewers to have unique experiences and insights with the visualization. And the fourth principle, empowerment, captures the dual aspiration of empowering visualization designers and viewers. On the one hand, designers should be able to let their voice be heard and perspective on an issue be seen. On the other hand, viewers should be enabled to question the representations, utilize them to tell their own story, and shift from awareness to action. These principles are not meant as the complete criteria for judging a given visualization good or bad, but they were an attempt to devise a questioning lens on what we called engaging data visualizations. Now, looking back, I still find these useful to examine existing visualizations, but they may not be that effective to generate new ideas for innovative visualization techniques. And when we consider actually the recent proliferation of data viz across various sectors and disciplines, there's still a need for critical perspectives to come to grips with the ethical and epistemological implications of data viz. And thankfully, over the last few years, we have seen a growing body of exciting work that thoroughly engages with cultural, political, and ethical aspects of our field. In his book, All Data Are Local, Yanni Loukissas traces the local specificity of data practices and demonstrates how understanding the data setting is crucial for understanding data in the first place. He also highlights the impact of recontextualization of data through digital interfaces such as data visualization. With data feminism, Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren Klein demonstrate the import of humanist thought such as intersectional feminism in data science and visualization. And I'm really excited to hear their talk later today. It is feminist theory and methods that Catherine and Lauren are invoking to develop fundamental principles that address questions of power and exclusion in data science and visualization. And the book Data Visualization in Society, edited by Martin Engebretsen and Helen Kennedy, offers a rich and comprehensive set of sociological and semiotic research on data visualization practices, principles, and pedagogies. So last year, this workshop actually ended with a plea to humanize visualization. And I would say this is already in full swing. At a time when the IEEE VIS community is turning 30 years old, we witness the emergence of a kind of humanities of and for visualization. We might call this critical infovis, interpretivist visualization, or the dawn of a visualization philosophy. Either way, I'm convinced that this humanist wave of visualization research is not optional icing on the cake, but necessary and overdue. This is not only instructive, but also very much generative. And this is what this talk is about. How can critique drive creation and vice versa? What if we would treat visualization as seriously as the big question about life, the universe, and everything? In order to do this, not just as a solitary or socially distanced exercise on a Sunday, we need to find ways to pursue these speculations and enter into productive collaborations. So Michael Carell talked last year about a power imbalance that can occur when we apply visualization to humanities work without actually meeting on an equal footing. I agree with his argument against such a service orientation, but I want to emphasize that there are various types of collaborations between visualization and various fields of the humanities. And this workshop is actually a testament to a spectrum of collaborative engagements. So instead of a service orientation, I actually fully subscribe to the notion of sandcastles as proposed by Uta Hinrichs and colleagues to describe cross-disciplinary and collaborative knowledge generation during which visualizations act as provocations, speculations, and mediations. And what I really like about sandcastling is the inviting and open gesture. So let's build sandcastles together. I would now like to talk about 3 research projects that did not start from a place of service, but rather at the proverbial beach, as speculations about data visualization. Drawing from humanistic thinking, we ask simple but fundamental what-if questions about the basic principles of our field. First, what if we reconsider bureaucratic notions of users through the lens of a poetic persona? This is work I've done together with my PhD advisors Sheila Carpendale and Carrie Williamson at the University of Calgary. The aim was to imagine novel visualizations and interfaces that play towards positive attitudes and not deficiencies. And to do this, we turn to Paris, where the literary figure of the Flaneur roams the boulevards, arcades, and cafes. This is at a time when cities were starting to grow rapidly and industrialization was really picking up steam. This figure was discussed in cultural studies either as someone who's casual or leisurely interested in the city, and other scholars actually saw the more critical and subversive facets of this persona. For the purpose of this research, we took an inclusive understanding. We considered the flaneur to be someone who's very much interested in what the city has to offer, but not in terms of the commercial spectacle, or not only, but rather in terms of the sensations and different kind of perspectives that one could gain in the city. This personal pace and perspective that the flaneur has also allows him to actually reflect on his own critical attitude. So as a flaneur, he's actually torn between the fascination by the urban spectacle and the repulsion concerning the social realities that appear to come with modern progress. And as part of this grappling with these tensions, the flaneur sees the city as an epic story that calls for creative interpretation. Trying to make the urban landscape meaningful, the flaneur dismantles present realities, reassembles them, and imagines alternative possibilities. Now, what has this to do with actually data or visualization, you may ask? Well, everything. The flaneur arose in the growing city of the 19th century, which in fact has many things in common with today's digital information spaces: growing size, significance, and struggles. And so just quite similar actually to the role that data and social media and digital information spaces play today as cultural backdrops for pretty much everything that we do. So the flaneur is an inspiring, human-centered analogy for information seekers. With his curious, critical, and creative approach to the city, the flaneur provides a refreshing lens to rethink our notion of users. With the flaneur as a lens, we can imagine and examine actually human-centered research on information seeking and visualization, and conceptualize the information flaneur as a new model that promotes a shift away from the deficiencies and work-centered artifacts to more positive traits, activities, and experiences. And informed by this interdisciplinary research and inspired by the mindset of the urban flaneur, we proposed the information flaneur to be a positive persona for information seeking and data visualization. The information flaneur may not represent all people or practices. However, we draw on ample evidence for these kinds of attitudes and activities. And in order to better support these practices, we try to translate the poetic persona to the design of interactive visualizations and interfaces. We proposed for that an interaction schema that spans action, perception, and affect. And the general idea here is that information seekers tend to shift actually between high-level and low-level activities that can be understood along these three experiential dimensions. Now, considering horizontal exploration and vertical immersion, we faced the challenge to bring together abstract and detailed representations of information spaces. And this challenge has actually triggered a whole series of projects and collaborations, especially in the context of digital cultural heritage. And I would like to show briefly one project which has now become the Vicus Viewer, a visualization that was specifically designed for cultural collections. It was created by Christopher Peach, Katrin Glinka, and myself, and the interface basically places thousands of drawings made by Frederick William IV throughout his lifetime along a timeline, a zoomable timeline as you see. The images can be filtered along tags, and the entire space can be zoomed and panned, and as you zoom in you get really high detailed imagery of the drawings that this Prussian ruler has created during his life. Now, I'm going to keep this very short here. I encourage you to play with it. We have actually expanded this tool, this visualization, with further layouts and also worked with other collections. But just to emphasize this, the idea of the horizontal and vertical approach and the idea of actually supporting an information flaneur attitude towards this collection has been a central motivation and a central conceptual basis for collection visualization, such as the Vicus viewer here. Okay, so the second sandcastle gets started at Newcastle University in the UK in collaboration with Rob Comer and Martin Date Robertson. And we asked what happens if we do away with the distinction between overview and detail. We took the growing prevalence of networks as a starting point to question this basic distinction in visualization. As you know, whenever we engage with relational information spaces, we tend to operate at two distinct levels, micro and macro. Either we take a close look at an individual node, or we see a broad overview of an entire network. This dichotomy is reflected by the available interfaces for relational information spaces. Profile pages focus on individual elements with only hints at their social embeddedness, while network visualizations show everything at once, often reducing the rich relationships among elements to a hairball of overlapping lines. And for this research, we wanted to explore the space between part and whole to generate new ideas for the design of visual interfaces that let us access and explore rich relational collections where details of elements are integrated into one view of the collection. To do this, we are considering the philosophical concept of monads. In a paper in the British Journal of Sociology, Bruno Latour and colleagues defined the concept of monads in the following way: a point of view on all the entities taken severally and not as a totality. Now, in that article, they actually refer back to Gabriel Tarde, a French sociologist who actually wrote an entire book on monads. In this book, Tarde characterizes the monad in a more active way. Each monad draws the world to itself and thus has a better grasp of itself. The point for us is that the monad is neither whole nor part, but a unique perspective of one particular element on all the other elements of the whole collection. And we were very intrigued by these ideas as they gave us new ways to think not just about actually information representation, but also interactivity. To translate the concept of monads to visualization design, we distilled three basic qualities of Tarde's monadology that we found to be very instructive. Having describes the importance of relational aspects in information spaces. For this, we need to find ways to represent the social world of a collection. Difference is about the fact that each monad is a unique perspective onto the world. This quality emphasizes an element's distinct position in a collection. And movement highlights the associations among elements that are contingent and dynamic and cannot be statically captured, but require constant change of position and perspective. Could we support such a navigation between overlapping monads? Now, taken together, we proposed monadic exploration as an open-ended movement along elements which are in turn overlapping perspectives in relational information spaces. There are many ways how the ideas of monadic exploration can be applied to interfaces and visualization design. In the context of the initial project, we demonstrated one attempt, but we were confident that there are many more possibilities. For this, we first set ourselves one general objective. We want to treat elements as vantage and navigation points. And with more specific design goals, we hypothesized, if not imagined, an interface that would offer an elastic arrangement of elements, reveal differences among elements, and integrate search functionality with navigation. In the following, I will briefly go through the key design decisions for our first prototype. First, we opted for a circular layout around which elements are positioned according to a global ordering and interactive query formulations and selections. The active element, or search box, is displayed in the center, and all the other items are placed around it. Those with high relevance or attraction scores are drawn closer to the center, and the less relevant elements, they move towards the periphery of the display. The attraction value is based on both direct and indirect links among elements. So here in this example network, even if the nodes B and F may not become BFFs or even neighbors, we can still compute a latent attraction force that is based on the paths via shared neighbors and their neighbors. The result is that instead of having a binary adjacency matrix, we can compute an attraction matrix that captures more nuanced differences in the relationships between elements, even if they share no edge. With this, we have everything for position. And now onto the interaction side. The visualization supports, so this initial visualization supports three basic operations. You can search, hover, and select. When you search, the elements move towards the center when they are more relevant, when they actually match. All the elements that actually do not match at all are on the very outside. And then you can select elements, and the selected elements move into the center. And whenever you change basically queries or selections, you notice these gradual movements of elements inward or outward, which reflects kind of this movement through this relational collection. Now, this was a first attempt, and we were actually relatively happy with the result. To see how people would actually respond to an interface designed towards monadic exploration, we closely collaborated with the editors behind the book Beautiful Trouble, a toolbox for revolution, which is essentially a recipe book for peaceful and creative forms of activism. We chose this book as a case study because it is a highly cross-referenced collection of information entries, but also because of the passionate interest that editors and readers have for this subject matter. After deploying the visualization for several months, and by now actually for several years, we've received a range of favorable feedback. And I want to quickly highlight two key observations. One editor compared this view to a new type of table of contents that highlights relationships and the actual content, actual titles and some of the teasers are actually included. So that's something he deemed highly useful for the purpose of drawing readers into the book. From visitors, we received mostly positive feedback, even though there were also some confusions among them, but their statements often mixed their interest in the content and thoughts on the interface. So according to this and other feedback submissions, it seemed as if the visualization was resonating with the rich material of the book. Since then, the idea of monadic exploration is actually something we have picked up in multiple projects. I want to highlight one project, a student research project, in which we have actually applied these ideas to a collection of historic glass negatives from the Museum for Art and Design in Hamburg. So here the designers and developers was a team comprised of Pauline Junginger, Dennis Ostendorf, Barbara Avila Viserini, Anastasia Voloshina, Timo Hausmann, Sarah Kreisler, and I was mostly on the sidelines. I want to highlight this one here. I want to highlight this, which is called the close-up cloud, because it offers maybe a surprising take on that complication between overview and detail. Now, you already have seen now some steps in here, but basically it's an entirely, I would say, different visualization technique, as it actually takes the details, as you see here, as the starting point for the overall overview on an entire collection. So here, as you see right now, the squares actually stand for different iconographic details, and the size of these squares corresponds to the frequency across the collection. And as you select one of these squares, you will basically see a filtered view for this particular tag, and then you step by step actually get an overview of individual items, while the initial overview comprised details. Now, this is again a prototype, a visualization technique, a proposition that really doesn't work so well in video. So I'd suggest you to try it out yourself and play around and explore these historic glass negatives. Now, the last and third concept is based on joint work with my colleagues Viktoria Brüggemann and Marc-Jan Bludau at the UC Lab in Potsdam. For this research, we asked ourselves, what if we would consider encoding and interaction in unison as inseparable parts of any data visualization? The visual encoding has always been central to visualization teaching, research, and practice. For this, the visual variables are, of course, important building blocks. On the other hand, there has also been considerable research interest in the role of interactivity for engagement, insight, and comprehension, such as the paper Fluid Interaction by Niklas Elmquist et al. Demonstrates. Yet when visualizations are designed, most of the time there seems to be much less attention devoted to their interactivity compared to the visual encoding. There seems to be a gap in the design process between devising data mappings and integrating interactive capabilities, which is typically done as a second step, if not even as an afterthought. Now, while this gap is often bridged through animated transitions, the resulting animations can be visually jarring and may not be that meaningful. So to address this gap, we'd suggest the consideration of the philosophical concept of the fold as a new way of interpreting and creating interactive data visualizations. For our work, we focus on Gilles Deleuze's thoughts on perception and information processing and try to link it to data visualization. So let's unpack this. In the work by Deleuze, we encounter the monads again as a basic building block of the world. Each monad is filled with folds on two levels, the pleats of matter and the folds in the soul, which are distinct and still continuously interwoven, not unlike encoding and interaction in visualization. According to Deleuze, the monad already holds all information, twisted into many folds. If it was confronted with questions or new information, the folds would begin to twist and turn into a variety of permutations, after which the resulting answer or links to other information can become suddenly visible. The answer was already there, it was only hidden or not yet folded into an intelligible form. For Deleuze, the three operations, explication, implication, and complication, form the essential triad of the fold. The first two, they need to be understood as a pair of which one is reversing the other. Explication describes the process of unfolding, such as opening a book, while implication in turn refers to the commonly known process of folding that reduces something in size and detail, such as closing an open book. These operations draw our attention closely to visibility and presence. If something inside the monad is hidden through the process of implication, what is folded still comprises everything else, though this is not always perceivable with the human senses. Through the process of explication, hidden connections can become visible again. So this is actually utterly interesting if you think about data visualization. What is shown versus what is hidden or not shown yet. As the third operation of the fold, complication offers an explanation of how sense-making works, as information accumulation and connection building of everything perceivable, while also addressing its arbitrariness and incompleteness. Because everything inside the monad is folded to infinity, every possibility already lies inside of it, yet it cannot expose itself in its entirety at any moment. It's simply way too much to grasp at a given moment. Surprising occurrences are thus complicated folding processes in which connections are rearranged and only part of the connected universe becomes visible. This perpetual incompleteness of any knowledge is what makes this theory so relevant for data visualization. With visualization, we typically aim to explore and communicate complex matters. But when we do this, we also need to make these omissions and reductions that are necessary to actually make something understandable, but we also may have to convey actually what we have reduced, what we have omitted, what actually the scope of a given visualization is. And the fold makes a unique proposition about the place of interactivity in this regard, in actually accommodating and dealing with incompleteness. It's an invitation to approach data through interactive visualizations as elastic, coherent, and potentially infinite systems. Instead of focusing on static snapshots of visualizations, which would favor their visual encoding, the fold actually sheds light on the in-between states of folding processes, emphasizing the transitions between display states as meaningful ways that need to be carefully considered and designed. Now, contrary to techniques that split dimensions into multiple views or enforce abrupt display changes, the fold suggests traceable transitions between successive visualization states, which gradually integrate additional data aspects into the same visualization. Now, as you can tell from my enthusiasm, we see the fold as an opportunity to conceptualize visualization in a novel framework that rejects the separation between interactivity and visual encoding. Deleuze's treatment of the fold is rather extensive, if not elusive at times, and therefore I had to actually gloss over many details here. As a little hat trick, I would refer you to our recently published DHQ paper, where you find many more details unfolded, illustrated, and referenced. These ideas of the fold actually found their application and also iteration during a collaboration with the Theodor Fontana archive in Potsdam. The aim of the project was to support the scalable study of the reference library of this German author. The books contain various reading traces in the form of annotations, comments in his own handwriting, scribbles, and so forth. You can actually view that collection at various scales. You can filter it and focus on different subsets. And each transition, each display change is carefully crafted and considered. And there's also actually a complication mode that we're looking at right now, where the various books are placed based on their similarity, not in terms of content, but actually in terms of reading behavior. So it basically offers a really alternative, maybe in a way surprising way of engaging with that data collection. Now, before my microphone is being turned off, let me briefly conclude. In the context of digital humanities and cultural heritage research, the power of philosophical concepts have proven to cross disciplinary boundaries by offering an evocative and inviting vocabulary. With these terms, with these concepts, we were able to challenge conventions and also overcome, I would argue, I would propose, overcome dichotomies such as overview and detail and visual encoding and interaction. Furthermore, and maybe most importantly for the collaborative nature of our research, the concepts allowed us to co-develop together collaboratively a coherent frameworks that are not muddied by technical details, but rather aspire to a certain shared vision about a project. However, imbuing data visualization also comes at a cost and also with risks. And so there are a few of these that I briefly want to mention. The first one could also be considered a chance. There's the chance or the risk of getting lost in a rabbit hole. As you know, each paper, each book, each theory that you encounter is a portal into an entirely new universe. And when you're not trained in actually reading humanities literature or certain schools of philosophy, you might get sidetracked or really pulled deeply in. I don't know, this is probably true for any kind of academic discipline, but I would say particularly when we're dealing with philosophy. Now, there's a maybe more severe risk or pitfall, which is the reduction of rich, intricate philosophical concepts and turning them into simple and mundane design resources, bite-sized catchphrases with which we basically motivate or sell research ideas. And the issue here is that we might disregard actually critical distinctions and nuances and also developments of certain terms. So, for example, the Flaneur has all kinds of baggage and complications with regards to gender, class, and the historical situation, which I entirely glossed over. So these are not just theoretical risks. I think that's also something we need to figure out. And last but not least, and also equally important also for what I have presented over the last half an hour or so, is the risk of actually remaining stuck in a land of stale, male, and pale philosophers. At a time when we actually need philosophies for the future that represent the full diversity of humankind. And as I said, we need to connect more with current epistemological thinking and writing about life, the universe, and everything. For example, this wonderful collection edited by Anna Tsing and colleagues is a treasure trove of inspiration, especially also for data visualization, I would say. Considering the devastating state of the world, I really concur with the editors of this collection that we need to cultivate a form of curiosity that recognizes entanglements, complexity, and the shimmer. And I'm actually really hopeful that, however we want to call this, critical, interpretivist, or humanist data visualization has really something valuable and meaningful to contribute here. So I would now like to end with a plea. We need to intertwine visualization, research, and practice with epistemological advances in academic programs in other disciplines to stay relevant or become relevant again. So for this, we need to expand the scope of our consideration in humanist visualization research and practice to also include social and ecological concerns. And we need visualization philosophies that let us envision new worlds, that let us see not just from above, but also from underneath and inside the cracks. Now, before I really end, I briefly send my warmest and special thanks to my wonderful collaborators here listed in order of appearance in this presentation. I also want to sneak in a cheeky wink and wave to a future colleague with experience in 3D and semantic web data. If you are out there, please contact us. And I look forward to your questions and the exchanges during the workshop, as well as your presentations today. Thank you very much.